Good.
Set 5 years after the catastrophic events of Jurassic World Dominion, the film concludes with a sobering lesson that some experiments should remain buried and some islands should stay off limits. The ending unfolds as both a climactic fight for survival and a philosophical meditation on playing God with prehistoric life. Unlike earlier entries that wrapped up with triumphant getaways, Rebirth leaves us with moral complexity and Pyrrhic victories that make me wonder if we really learned anything from our past mistakes. Even though critics have not been generous, Rebirth's scores have been middling at best. I believe the movie still delivers the thrills and tension that made the original Jurassic Park series so iconic. I personally loved the intense action sequences, even if a few of them felt familiar from past films. In this video, we'll break down how the ending reshapes the franchise's take on extinction and choice under pressure. Let's dive in and unpack every bone-chilling moment and all the open-ended burning question.
Come on, run!
Let's explore the story first. 5 years after Dominion's events, Earth's ecology has proven largely inhospitable to the remaining dinosaur populations. Climate change and genetic instability have decimated the creatures that once threatened to dominate the planet, forcing the survivors into isolated equatorial environments that mirror their ancient habitats. This premise immediately establishes a world where dinosaurs exist not as global threats, but as endangered species clinging to survival in remote sanctuaries. The pharmaceutical company Genetics identifies 3 colossal creatures representing the largest specimens from land, sea, and air, whose DNA holds the key to revolutionary medical breakthroughs, specifically a drug capable of treating heart disease and saving countless human lives. This noble goal masks the darker reality of corporate exploitation that has always been central to the Jurassic franchise. Scarlett Johansson's Zora Bennett emerges as a complex protagonist, a former military operative turned covert extraction expert who embodies the franchise's recurring theme of skilled professionals venturing into dangerous dinosaur territory. Her character arc follows the classic trajectory of mercenaries who discover their humanity amid chaos, similar to Roland Tembo from The Lost World. Zora assembles a specialized team including Duncan Kincaid, Mahershala Ali, her trusted team leader, Dr. Henry Loomis, Jonathan Bailey, a paleontologist whose expertise becomes crucial, and several support members who will face increasingly deadly encounters. The pharmaceutical representative, Martin Krebs, Rupert Friend, accompanies the mission, representing the corporate interests that drive the expedition. The team's destination is San Hubar, a Caribbean island that once served as InGen's secret testing facility for the original Jurassic Park experiments. This location represents a third island in the franchise's mythology, distinct from both Isla Nublar and Isla Sorna, and harbours decades-old secrets that make it far more dangerous than anticipated. The island's history reveals it as a dumping ground for InGen's failed experiments, the worst of the worst that were deemed too dangerous or unstable for the main park. These creatures have been thriving in isolation for decades, evolving and adapting in ways that make them uniquely lethal threats. The mission becomes complicated when Zora's team encounters the Delgado family, Ruben, his daughters Teresa and Isabella, and Teresa's boyfriend Xavier, whose boating expedition was attacked by aquatic dinosaurs. This civilian element adds emotional stakes to the purely professional mission, forcing Zora to confront the human cost of their extraction operation. The family's presence serves multiple narrative functions. They provide relatable characters for audiences to connect with, they create moral dilemmas for the extraction team, and they represent the innocent victims of corporate schemes that have defined the franchise since the original film. As the team progresses deeper into the island, they encounter creatures that represent InGen's darkest failures. The island houses not just regular dinosaurs, but genetically modified abominations that were the result of reckless experimentation.
Open the door! 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 Open the door!
The Distortus Rex, D-Rex. The film's primary antagonist is a grotesque hybrid that stands as perhaps the most terrifying creation in the franchise's history. At 26 feet tall, 47 feet long, and weighing approximately 20,000 pounds, the D-Rex is a failed attempt to genetically engineer a Tyrannosaurus Rex. The creature features bloated legs, an extra set of arms, and an engorged head it can barely support. A physical manifestation of genetic experimentation gone horribly wrong. The D-Rex's cage, marking V26.7, reveals that this creature represents the 27th attempt at creating this particular hybrid, suggesting 26 previous failures that presumably met even worse fates. This detail emphasizes the callous persistence of corporate scientific ambition, where failure is measured not in ethical terms, but in iterative improvements toward an impossible goal.
Time to move.
The Mutodons. These flying hybrid creatures combine velociraptor DNA with pterosaur genetics, creating winged predators that can hunt both on land and in the air. At 6 feet 7 inches tall and weighing 550 pounds, these creatures represent InGen's attempts to create the ultimate predator by combining the intelligence and pack hunting abilities of raptors with aerial mobility. The Mutodons embody the franchise's recurring theme that genetic tampering creates monsters that are greater than the sum of their parts. Their design reflects the idea that every improvement made by scientists actually makes these creatures more dangerous and less natural. The film establishes its dangerous tone early with the death of a scientist in the prologue who falls victim to the D-Rex when a simple Snickers wrapper causes a power outage that allows the creature to escape its containment. This death serves as both product placement and narrative setup, demonstrating how small human errors can have catastrophic consequences in environments where genetic monsters roam free. As Zora's team approaches San Hubar, the aquatic dangers immediately assert themselves. The boat attack sequence results in the deaths of 2 team members. Bobby, Ed Screen, is killed during the Mosasaurus and Spinosaurus assault on their vessel, while Nina, Philippine Velge, is dragged back into the ocean by a Spinosaurus after the group makes landfall. These deaths establish that the mission's dangers extend beyond land-based threats, and that the island's waters are equally lethal. During the Quetzalcoatlus cliff face sequence, where Zora and Henry attempt to extract a final DNA sample from an egg, team member Leclerc, Bétier Sylvain, becomes another casualty. Pursued up the cliff face by the enormous flying dinosaur, he is consumed in a scene reminiscent of a pelican swallowing fish whole. This death emphasizes the vertical nature of the threats on the island and demonstrates that no environment, land, sea, or air, offers safety from the island's predators. The film's climax takes place in an abandoned village on San Hubar, where both the extraction team and the Delgado family converge in a desperate attempt to escape the island. This location serves as a perfect metaphor for the human habitation that has been overwhelmed by the consequences of genetic manipulation. A civilization abandoned to monsters of humanity's own creation, the village setting provides multiple tactical advantages and disadvantages for the characters. Buildings offer temporary shelter but can become traps. Underground tunnel systems provide escape routes but also confine spaces where large predators become even more dangerous, and the infrastructure creates both obstacles and tools for survival. The village sequence includes a harrowing nighttime encounter with the Mutodons, where the characters must use their intelligence and the environment to survive against aerial predators. The scene showcases Zora's tactical expertise as she lures at least one Mutodon away from the group, sliding under a truck to avoid its attack. This sequence emphasizes the film's horror elements while demonstrating the protagonist's resourcefulness under extreme pressure. When the surface becomes too dangerous, the survivors retreat to an underground tunnel system that runs beneath the island. These tunnels represent both salvation and additional danger. They provide a route to the ocean and potential escape, but they also become confined spaces where the Mutodon can trap the group. The tunnel sequence creates intense claustrophobic tension as as the survivors navigate dark, confined spaces while being pursued by genetic predators. The environmental storytelling reveals the island's infrastructure was designed with these tunnel systems, suggesting that InGen always anticipated the need for emergency evacuations from their experiments. The tunnel escape culminates at a locked gate that controls access to the ocean and the group's escape boat. In a moment that recalls the franchise's tradition of child protagonists displaying courage under pressure, young Isabella Delgado must squeeze through the gate's railings to reach the control panel and open it for the others. This sequence creates multiple layers of tension. The child is exposed to danger, the adults are helpless to protect her, and the Mutodon is approaching through the tunnels. Isabella's successful activation of the gate represents not just mechanical problem solving, but the triumph of innocent courage over corporate-created monsters. The film's treatment of corporate antagonist Martin Krebs provides a satisfying resolution to the franchise's long-standing critique of profit-driven exploitation of genetic resources. When the extraction mission is complete and all 3 dinosaur DNA samples have been obtained, Martin reveals his true priorities by attempting to escape with the samples while abandoning the rest of the group. Martin's decision to handcuff the sample case to his wrist demonstrates both his determination to secure the genetic material and his paranoia about being betrayed by his own team. This action ultimately becomes his downfall when the D-Rex attacks him in the film's final act. The planned helicopter extraction represents the team's primary escape route, but the plan fails when the aircraft cannot locate the survivors at the designated pickup point. Dr. Henry Loomis attempts to signal the helicopter with flares, and the aircraft begins to turn around, creating a moment of hope for the stranded group. However, this hope is immediately destroyed when the genetically modified D-Rex appears and destroys the helicopter in its massive jaws. This moment serves multiple narrative purposes. It eliminates the primary escape route, demonstrates the D-Rex's incredible size and power, and creates the desperation that drives the characters into the tunnel system. Martin Krebs meets his end during the final confrontation with the D-Rex, attacked while trying to escape with the dinosaur DNA samples. The case containing the samples remains handcuffed to his wrist, but when the D-Rex bites off his arm, the other survivors are able to retrieve the genetic material. This death serves as poetic justice for Martin's corporate greed and willingness to abandon others for profit. The fact that the samples are ultimately recovered suggests that the scientific mission can continue, but at the cost of the corporate representative who prioritized profit over human life. The ending's deeper implications, what Rebirth really means. Despite the horrific losses and near-apocalyptic encounters on San Hubar, the film's ending suggests that the fundamental problems driving the Jurassic franchise's conflicts remain unresolved. The successful extraction of genetic material means that pharmaceutical companies will continue to exploit dinosaur DNA for profit, regardless of the human cost. The absence of post-credits scenes in Rebirth is significant. It suggests that this story is complete in itself, but also that the larger issues of corporate genetic exploitation continue beyond the film's conclusion. The extracted DNA represents both a medical breakthrough and the seed of future disasters. The film's premise that dinosaurs cannot survive in the modern world's climate reflects real-world concerns about species extinction and environmental change. The irony that creatures brought back from extinction are facing extinction again due to human-caused environmental changes adds layers of meaning to the traditional monster movie narrative. San Hubar represents a kind of genetic ark, a place where failed experiments survive and thrive in isolation. The island's ecosystem demonstrates that even failed genetic modifications can find their niche when freed from human control and interference. The Distortus Rex and Mutodons represent the film's central thesis about the dangers of unchecked genetic experimentation. These creatures are not naturally evolved predators, but man-made horrors that exist solely because corporate scientists refuse to accept natural limitations. The D-Rex's designation as V26.7 particularly emphasizes this theme. It represents not just one failed experiment, but the 27th iteration in a series of increasingly dangerous attempts to improve upon nature. The fact that scientists continued this project through 26 previous failures demonstrates a callous disregard for the consequences of their work. What happened to the global dinosaur population? Rebirth definitively answers the question left hanging after Dominion's conclusion about human-dinosaur coexistence. Rather than integrating into global ecosystems, the escaped dinosaurs have largely died off due to environmental incompatibility, disease, and climate change. This resolution effectively resets the franchise's scope back to isolated island encounters while acknowledging the ecological realities that previous films ignored. Where do the franchise's most dangerous experiments go? The revelation that San Hubar served as a dumping ground for InGen's failed experiments provides crucial backstory for the franchise's corporate antagonists. Rather than destroying their failures, the company simply abandoned them on remote islands, creating time bombs of genetic instability that could threaten future generations. This revelation recontextualizes the entire franchise's timeline. Every successful creature seen in previous films was preceded by multiple failures that were simply hidden away rather than properly disposed of. Can humanity learn from its mistakes? The film's conclusion suggests a pessimistic answer to this central franchise question. Despite witnessing the horrors created by genetic manipulation, the surviving characters successfully extract the DNA samples that will enable continued experimentation. The cycle of corporate exploitation and genetic tampering will continue, suggesting that humanity's capacity for learning from mistakes is limited by its appetite for profit and power. What role do children play in surviving genetic disasters? Continuing the franchise's tradition of child protagonists who demonstrate superior survival instincts, Isabella Delgado's heroic actions during the tunnel escape emphasize that innocence and courage often triumph where adult knowledge and experience fail. Her ability to solve the gate crisis suggests that the next generation may be better equipped to handle the consequences of the previous generation's mistakes. Returning to Spielbergian roots, director Gareth Edwards has explicitly described Rebirth as a giant love letter to Steven Spielberg and his earlier films, promising moments that recall Jaws and other classics. The film's focus on practical survival over high-tech solutions reflects this influence, emphasizing character development and emotional stakes over spectacular effects sequences. The river raft sequence featuring a swimming T-Rex has been particularly praised as capturing the awe and danger that made the original Jurassic Park memorable. This sequence demonstrates Edwards' commitment to recreating the wonder and terror that made Spielberg's original film a cultural phenomenon. Future implications. Setting up a new trilogy. Edwards has expressed hope that Rebirth represents the beginning of a brand new chapter in this franchise and has suggested it could lead to a new trilogy. However, the film functions as a standalone story that new audiences can enjoy without extensive knowledge of previous entries. This approach allows the franchise to reset its mythology while maintaining connections to established lore. The exploration of San Hubar as a third major island location provides new territorial opportunities for future stories while explaining previously unexplored aspects of InGen's corporate history. Having said that, I have to admit that I liked the movie. Jurassic movies are tied to my childhood emotions, so I struggle to spot a lot of its flaws, but the majority of critics don't feel the same, and their disappointment only underlines how far this installment has strayed from what once made the franchise raw. This brings us to the end of the video, and if you liked what you see here, drop a subs for us. We will see you in the next one, and do tell us in the comments, where do you want Jurassic franchise to go from here?